Hello, hello. What is up, everybody? Matt Gajeski here, back again talking college football. And today we are doing something special, breaking down a college football underdog best ball draft. Where everything is live. It appears that it is on YouTube. And perfect. All right. Couple housekeeping things. Going to jump into a draft right now, and hopefully it'll fill soon. But these released on Monday, so we have rankings available. I'll put the link below in the description to the video. Those are updated basically every time I get the chance. Right now, doing it daily because everything is changing so fast. Places are releasing rankings. ADP is shifting wildly day to day, and a lot's going to change as we get news as well. It looks like this is almost filled. We're waiting on two. So, a couple housekeeping notes. In addition, these drafts are 20 rounds and there's 12 people in each one. It's half PPR on Underdog as the format. If you've never done these, they're still very new. We basically had 1 year of data and it came out pretty late last season. I'm going to share my screen and show you guys what the draft looks like. So obviously when this fills, it'll look a little different here. My ranks are currently in there. Again, updating those as quickly as possible and as often as possible. But as far as roster construction goes, it looks a lot like NFL. The main differences are you have a super flex, so you're playing two quarterbacks. That makes it the most important position, especially because that's the position that scores the most week in and week out. And from there, looking at taking 4 to 5 of them. A lot of controversial opinions last year on how many quarterbacks to take. The advance rate for teams that had 4 to 5 were extremely good. You should be prioritizing that. As far as when to take them in the draft, this early, there's a lot of guys still going really late. 18th, 19th, 20th round picks you can get. So I'm not necessarily going out of my way to draft the elite ones right now because of what you can get late. And with the other positions, running back and receiver, looking for about 6 to 7 of each with a half PPR scoring. It does favor running backs, especially up at the top. It's also a position that's a little more scarce right now. When you look at running backs, you'll see a big difference between the lead backs for teams like Pitt, Minnesota, Oregon, with those three up at the top of the rankings, compared to some of the guys you'll see later. You will see in the top 100 a lot of assumptions being made for teams like Arizona, Iowa. Think about the teams that had elite running backs last year, Syracuse. There's this natural inclination for people to just want to assume the guy at the top of the depth chart is automatically going to get that role when it is not necessarily the case. So in our rankings, you will see guys like Kamari Moulton. You've seen Willis, some of them a little lower. With that said, there are running backs you can take shots on that are in similar situations, just quite weren't as effective last year. Think Illinois, Florida. Those running backs are also going to be in timeshares, probably a little similar to some of the guys like on Syracuse, and they're going at the end of drafts. So I think the big thing to think about with running back and wide receiver for that matter is flexibility. If you end up with the ability to take a Jeremiah Smith early or a Desmond Reed, by all means do so, but then follow the draft. You're going to have guys in the 18th, 19th, 20th round that are vastly going to outproduce expectation. And lastly, roster construction at tight end. This is by far your least important position. With the tight end spot, I'm trying to come out of drafts with just two of them. 18th, 19th, or 20th round picks. I'm not forcing tight ends. First of all, this is a position that scores way, way fewer points than any position that we have otherwise. It's also a position that's super uncertain. A lot of guys that were drafted highly last year didn't play the roles we thought they were going to. And otherwise, I mean, you can find reasonable starters in your 18th, 19th, 20th round. So we end up with pick 5 here. See what we get in the chat. Not seeing anything so far. How about Quinn Ewers? Yeah, Quinn Ewers, not the best season for him last year. We'll see what Arch Manning can do. But seeing we're drafting in the 5 slot, we're going to end up with one of these elite players. And Hopefully, it's a running back. Running back is very scarce right now compared to the other receivers. This is settled a little bit, but you are getting like Deuce Robinson in the 20th round, like Eric Singleton in the 20th round. There's still players like Lewis Bond from Boston College that are going to have 28% target shares that are going in the 20th round. So my priority at the top is generally going to be running backs early. I see Jordan Vanek is the number one pick in this draft. What's up, Jordan? A long time friend. It's not so much a friends and family draft, but Jordan, I've done some streams with him. Takes Desmond Reed. That's the no-brainer for me. Basically following these. I would have Cade Klubnik higher if quarterback wasn't so deep. I think he is very clearly separated as the number one quarterback. If you have questions on any individual player, or if you're in this draft and want your team evaluated at the end, by all means, let me know. We'll throw in player takes as we go throughout the stream here. It's kind of playing out according to expectations. A very easy pick. Run up Mekhi Hughes to the window here. Running back is the scarce position. Mekhi Hughes is the Tulane transfer who's filling in for Oregon, presumably. They still have Noah Whittington on the roster, so it is not going to be 300 carries, but it's going to be a lot. So that is a good place to begin for the draft here. So far, nothing really out of the ordinary. Devin Dampier. Awesome pick. We have our rankings adjusted for ADP. If we did not, he would be much higher. I think Devin Dampier is your second quarterback, and he's probably someone that is going to go much, much higher. So there's no problem with him. With Dampier, you just have crazy efficiency as he transfers over from New Mexico. Quinn Ewers, a player we are definitely much lower on. Arch Manning to Quinn Ewers in the chat. Just an unproven player that's not going to be the most mobile in an offense behind a brand new O-line, 4 new ones there. Basically an entirely new cast of skill position players. We will see how that goes. It's a little lower in the rankings as we move forward, but really this is kind of what you see as drafts go on. There hasn't been anything crazy so far through the first round. At the top of our board, a lot of running backs right now with that position just being far more scarce than the other ones. Getting my tab. I'm a little rusty on the live streaming, everyone, so excuse me as I navigate tab to tab here. Tom gets a Damon Claiborne share. It's a very good place. Isaac Brown's a controversial pick, but right now as the draft comes closer to us, we are getting set up to probably take a second running back. Here goes Hankerson was an awesome pick. We're a little higher than consensus on Nick Singleton, and he goes. So now this is a spot where it's a good debate. You can either take the higher ranked player in Coleman or Jaheim White. They're very close. So with White being higher ADP, I will take that. This is the new Rich Rod offense. They run the ball about 60% of the time. Quarterback is very involved with Mark Hill. They're just basically a lot of G5 transfers on that roster playing running back. So I don't think the timeshare is going to be quite as bad as it was at Jacksonville State. White can carry the ball. The main problem with him is probably just size. With that said, Rich Rod's never really had a problem running a smaller back, so no problems there. Nussmeier, Avery Johnson come off the board. Never taking Nussmeier above Johnson in a million years. We have him ranked significantly lower overall. But yeah, awesome start so far. Like what we're seeing on the board. Maybe we can get an Eric McAllister share as we get to this part of the draft. Quentin Joyner and Waymon Jordan go. Interesting backs. As you can see, we are way out ahead of players like Taylor Green, which no real problem with. But obviously, if Taylor Green's ranked 27th, but his ADP is 66, don't make that. We're going to take Jonah Coleman, third running back. Again, I have no problem with a start like this. It is the position of scarcity, so getting 3 of them up at the top, no issues with me. Ahmad Hardy from Missouri was one pick before. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Eric McAllister. But Ahmad Hardy, he's the Louisiana Monroe transfer. People are just assuming he's going to beat out the incumbents on Missouri, and they have some 4-stars. I'm not making that assumption over running backs like Jonah Coleman and Jamal Haynes, who have already shown they can handle a major workload at a P4 level. We just haven't seen that out of Ahmad Hardy, so I'm not quite willing to get there. A couple of interesting picks in a row. Antonio Williams, I'd rather just have the cheaper Clemson receivers. Sawyer Robertson should not be going higher than some of the dual threats. People saw his 3.7 yards per carry last year and forgot about that 45-yard touchdown run, which was essentially 25% of his rushing yards in the year. Thurman Weisner, just different situations. Now Weisner gets DJ Baxter back. I would rather have Jamal Haynes than basically everyone in that range. Denzel Boston is an interesting name. That offense is going to be a little run heavier, I would imagine, with Damon Williams under center. Last year, you had Will Rogers, who was essentially just a pocket passer, taking sacks back there. But Damon Williams can actually handle the ball on the ground. So I'm not quite anticipating that it's going to be that much of a pass-friendly offense. With that said, they lose Giles Jackson and Jeremiah Hunter, so Boston could have this absurd target share. He's the pick I'm most comfortable with in this range. Whether it's about where we expect. I'm going to switch this over to ADP as things get a little bit crazier in the ranks, just so we can see who's being drafted and probably switch between ranks and ADP. But yeah, if you continue to see players go off ahead or behind ADP and you have a question, please let me know. You can throw it in the chat and I will try to get to every one of them, continually looking back and seeing so far. Yeah, I hope that makes sense so far. We have 3 running backs. Just a recap. I know my face is covering it. We went Mekhi Hughes at 5, Jaheim White at 20, and Jonah Coleman at 29. We're up in another 4. Top of our board is Taylon Green. No real reason to take him right now. What I'm hoping for is getting one of the stud receivers, Eugene Wilson and Mekhi Lemon. We would have them ranked higher if their ADPs hadn't fallen. With Eugene Wilson, freshman breakout with Florida. That's an offense we're expecting to improve under DJ Lagway. They already had a pass rate around 50%. He falls to us behind Kenyon Sadiq and Josh Hoover, so we will happily take him. If it ended up being Lemon, would have had no problem with that. The USC depth chart is far more open this year, but they have quarterback uncertainty, turnover factory, Jaden Maeva. Maybe Hussein Longstreet plays. There's a good chance Maeva throws too many interceptions and ends up getting benched. So I think if you're debating between Eugene Wilson and Lemon, it's probably still Eugene Wilson. That chart with Florida is unproven. There's just a lot of 4 and 5 stars, but none of them have ever played. Sturdivant is not in competition at this point, in my opinion. Joey Vanek's back up. He also went to triple RB. We got Des Reed, Quentin Joyner, and Waymon Jordan. A very good start for him. Takes Dante Moore, Oregon. Interesting pick. Completely unproven QB. 2 unproven QBs. Goes Austin Simmons back-to-back. 2 first-year starters in this conference. So, Justice Haynes, a player we had very high. At this point, I think you can start debating the Taylon Green selection. I'm certainly taking Mekhi Lemon if he's still there. But Taylon Green goes. Of course, Wakey's a guy that is a very sharp player, so I'm not surprised. We'll take Mekhi Lemon because Taylon Green missed on us, but still, you'll notice the quarterback room. Let's just look quarterback by ADP. We have some of these guys way below expectation. You see Dante Moore, Nussmeier, those players already went. Those players should not be going that high. Jaden Maeva, I don't know if he starts the whole season. I would bet against it. And that is going to be a little bit more of a run-friendly offense. Julian Sand, we don't know if he plays the whole season. Rocco Becht, first of all, they have a bye during the fantasy playoffs for this. He also was playing behind a brand new offensive line, a bad one at that. And whilst both of his NFL pass catchers, I'm not so sure. There's a lot to be exploited at QB, so I'm still comfortable waiting. You can see the difference between like a Diego Pavia rank versus ADP. More than comfortable doing something like that. Again, quarterback is very unsettled right now. The market, I think, is pretty far off base for where it should be with a lot of these. I just saw the question in the chat from Dev. How long would you be comfortable waiting on QB? By about round 6 or 7, I think we want at least one. But as you can see, like we have some very good rankings on a lot of these players. Like Holstein, people aren't drafting Carson Beck, who's not a 0 on the ground, but he's not good. That's going to be an air raid offense in Miami. You have Jackson Arnold, who is a complete dual threat at Auburn. His job security is perfect. You have Tom Castellanos going at pick 110 right now. He's in the Gus Malzahn Florida State offense. That's the offense that brought players like John Bryce Plumlee into the fold. Now, Castellanos isn't quite the passer, so does he play it the whole time? I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, like you could argue waiting to double-digit rounds and like quadruple tapping quarterback at this area is completely fine. I mean, CJ, second four-star from NC State, is going in the double-digit rounds. So many decent players you can get. The pick 68, I'm taking Pavia right now, a few spots ahead of ADP. The story on him, this guy nearly rushed for 1,000 yards and then went up and threw over 2,500, if I'm not mistaken, with incredible efficiency. The main concerns with Pavia, weapons aren't great, offense is slow, but even with their win total being 4.5, he still outperforms a lot of these players. So as a dual threat first quarterback, we're obviously going to prioritize taking a lot of them right now. Pavia is being drafted way too late because the logo on his helmet says Vanderbilt and not LSU. There's a good chance that Pavia outscores LSU quarterback. Gary Nussmeier wouldn't be surprised on that whatsoever, just the way they score. And on this format as well, like having Pavia rush for 700, 800 yards with the potential for 1,000, there's just, you can't replace that in the air unless you're playing in one of these air raid offenses. So as we move forward with ADP, we have yet to take a tight end, only one quarterback. The top of my board right now is Emmett Johnson. He played a lot at the end of last year. We started seeing him get double-digit opportunities. Previously, he was more of a satellite pass-catching back, but they don't have a ton on the roster outside of him. He's a bit smaller, but I'm confident in his ability based on what we saw at the end of the year. It is a bet on the Matt Rule coaching staff continuing to use him like that, but he was just so much more efficient than anyone on the roster. So we'll take our fourth running back here. Rocco Beck goes, probably a little too high. Kevin Coleman from Missouri, transferred to Kobe Lane. I would rather have Lemon at cost than Lane right now. The targets per route are vastly different. I'll look back at ADP. Right now, the top of the board, Le'Veon Moss. Ruben Owens is back. Amari Daniels is back. It's just going to be very hard for all of them to pay off. Justin Jolly, we have him a little bit lower than expectation, but we just have the tight ends kind of depressed together. We do in the rankings screen, which are provided in the Discord. That's down below in the link. They're $9.95 for the entire summer. They update almost every day. But there's positional, let's call it scarcity factors that are in the rankings. Tight end being a position, first of all, of depth, just very unproven depth and unpredictable depth. It doesn't make a lot of sense to take them early unless you know you're getting an absolute stud. The three guys for me, the only one who's left is Jack Endries from Texas. The other two, I think you could take Stowers from Vanderbilt, or you could maybe look at Sadiq from Oregon. But other than that, it's Endries, or it's basically I'm probably just waiting to the last two rounds. So coming up for us, we still have some quarterbacks ranked really high, way ahead of ADP. Right now, most interested Jack Andrews gets one pick before me. That is who I was going to take. So with quarterback being a position we're a little weak on right now, we'll reach on Castellanos. His ADP has been sharply rising, and it's going to continue to do so. No real problem with that. Only concern with Castellanos is he good enough to play the whole season? I think you could have some confidence in that because their backup is Brock Glenn. What are they going to do? Are you really going to play Brock Glenn? He also doesn't run. I guess he doesn't fit the Gus Malzahn offense either, which is reliant on a dual threat quarterback. We are 1 year removed from Castellanos going for 1,000 yards on the ground. Last year he got hurt, and it ruined his ability to play. Then it goes Carson Beck and Lofton. Love Beck. Lofton, I would just rather have like Brett Northfleet in the last round. We don't know that Lofton is going to play all this. Jackson Arnold, pretty good value there. Aaron Jones, other good value. Let's see what we get. Likely a quarterback again. No running back I really want to reach on here. Sorry, there's a lot of traffic outside my place right now. Could take Jeremy Bernard. We have him ranked right around ADP here. I am going to take him just with quarterback being a position we can continue to wait on. Bernard, actually very close in production to Ryan Williams. The media won't tell you that, but Bernard, very similar in targets per route as well. Kind of a bit shocking, actually, when you look at the differences between these two players. Williams got all the hype. He had 865 yards, but Bernard was at 704. Less efficient, but more catches. 5.2 yard doesn't matter. Just two more. We'll see on this. Obviously, I think Ryan Williams is better, but it might be a little closer than people think. Bernard is a former four-star after all, so we shall see him. Maybe could have taken Casey Concepcion, the NC State transfer that went to A&M, but he had it down here, and it's a bit of a weird situation with them. That's going to be a very run-heavy offense with Texas A&M. So yeah, but the top of the board, still looking at some pretty decent quarterbacks: Luke Altmaier, CJ Bailey, Kalen Salter, Darian Mensah, Jalen Daniels. Quarterbacks, a lot of interest in. It was kind of a little mini run just over there. RPO, drones, almost. But yeah, there's still a few quarterbacks up at the top very interested in as well. Drew Aller, Pribula, Gunnar Stockton. I guess to briefly speak on these three and why we have them ranked pretty far ahead of ADP. Drew Aller, first of all, no Bo Pribula to come in and steal those random carries that he was doing last year. Second, I mean, this is just an infinitely better receiving core. You bring in three transfers, Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross. I mean, those aren't the only ones. This is going to be a much more friendly passing environment. Now, Penn State is a 10.5 win total. Are they going to need to pass all the time? No, but you are going to get yourself a few extra points just with Drew Aller not having to deal with Bo Pribula coming in and stealing some of those carries, especially in clear running situations. I'll briefly talk about Pribula after, depending on who we get. Hopefully it's one of these two guys. So Miller Moss goes ahead of the two dual threats. Questionable, but it is what it is. Nick Marsh goes. He's a solid pick. Baron Morton goes. Pocket passer from Texas Tech in the air raid. All right. So we get Aller. Pretty easy pick. Not that I was going to take Pribula with a 172 ADP. To speak on him, okay, the concern is he doesn't play the whole year because they have Sam Horn, who's also a former four-star. But, I mean, they paid like a couple $1 million to get Pribula from Penn State in the transfer portal via NIL. He's the player that would situationally come in and steal that rushing work in clear situations from Drew Aller. He's an elite dual threat. I don't see any reason not to take him higher. You just don't have to right now, which is why I wouldn't really recommend taking him at this point. So we are currently sitting 3 QBs. We have Diego Pavia, Thomas Castellanos, and Drew Aller. We clearly weighted more. We have Mekhi Hughes, Jaheim White, Jonah Coleman, Evan Johnson at running back, a very strong position. It's a weaker position overall, a more scarce position. Eugene Wilson, Mekhi Lemon, Jeremy Bernard. There's a player I have my eye on. I'm not going to say anything in case one of these players is in the chat that I really want to take. He did not go. Trent Walker is the man. This guy had a 30% target share with Oregon State last year. You might see Oregon State and not want to take a player. Remember, Oregon State is playing a Mountain West schedule because of the weird Pac-12. It's gone, and Oregon State doesn't have a real conference right now. So they're playing a weak schedule. Their win total is 6.5. They got Malik Murphy. This is going to be a pass-first offense. Malik Murphy can't do anything other than hand the ball off and throw. It's also a quarterback upgrade compared to last year where Walker, he had the 30% target share, which wasn't the most efficient, but everything is looking up for this Oregon State passing attack. And Clemens is there still. It's like the same team outside of the quarterback position. So Walker's a player that should be going much higher than he currently is. Happy to get him as wide receiver 4 on our team right now. He's being vastly underdrafted. If we didn't have any adjustments on him, we would have him as probably around a top 50 pick overall. But yeah. If you have anything in the chat, keep throwing it in there. This is my first time streaming to Twitter, so I'm not sure if you can comment on there or how it works. Excuse my ignorance. We will see maybe after this if I miss anything. But if you're in YouTube or anything, throw something in the chat if you have a question. As we go forward here, still probably not considering a tight end. The top of the board, Luke Reynolds. I mean, like I don't even think he's going to be the starter. Maybe he plays more. Terrence Carter, I guess he's a transfer. You could maybe look there. The Top of our board is still quarterbacks that would be reaches at this point, so no real need to take one right now unless you want to get Jalen Daniels, which is kind of interesting. The other positions, Hagan just went. He's very interesting to me. Mark Fletcher is a solid player. Not taking a receiver. So yeah, we're going to take Jalen Daniels around ADP. Again, the strategy on this is I don't need to take Pabula right now at pick 140. ADP is 172. Daniels, who we have ranked a little lower, goes around 140. You need to take him earlier. Again, we're probably going to end up with another one of these QBs. It's just a matter of who's still there. Now we have Pavia, Castellanos, Aller, and Jalen Daniels, a lot of dual threat guys. I guess to speak on that quickly, stacking is not as important to me in college football for two reasons. First of all, there are so many more points scored. Totals in college football, they don't stop at upper 30s, low 40s like in NFL. You see totals 60 plus points. Sometimes you have a rare game in the 70s. There's so many more teams as well. Your opportunity cost is much, much higher. When you could like stack a Pavia with Stowers early. When you take Stowers, you're limiting yourself and not getting a Eugene Wilson. So stacking definitely not as important. Second, you have quarterbacks with far more rushing ability. Diego Pavia, he projects for over 700 rushing yards for us. He did it last year. Castellanos went over 1,000 2 seasons ago. Jalen Daniels is a very good rusher. You just don't have this kind of rushing output in the NFL either. So there's different ways your quarterbacks can score. All that to say, stacking is not as important to me. If it works out, tiebreaker, fantastic. I'm not avoiding it. It's not something that I'm actively trying to do either. So as we get into this range, pick 149, we are still pretty far ahead of most of the running backs in this range. Wide receiver, James Brown is a solid option for us. Quarterback, still probably going to push this around with some of the ADPs later. So that sets up a pretty easy pick. Chase Brown, his target share approached 30% last year with Kansas State as well. They didn't do a lot to add anybody. Avery Johnson now has had another year starting under his belt. We're just trying to load guys that are seeing targets, even though the offense is not super pass friendly. But that is where we stand with Chase Brown. The top of the rankings right now, you will see it is still pretty quarterback heavy. That is just because we have them ranked pretty far ahead of other players at their position. But if you scroll down a little bit, start seeing the receivers and running backs populate. And again, you can toggle between ADP and ranks. If you're interested in the ranks, these are still being updated every single day. So it's not just what you see, it's what you get right now. A lot still to be determined for the season, as we have not even gotten to fall camp. We are making assumptions based on our best guess in certain situations, but we do not have all the information right now, which leads to opportunity, but uncertainty. Still a good time to draft. Anyway, as we move forward here, 4 RBs, 5 wide receivers, 4 QBs. We need to add at least 1 more QB. Looking probably collectively at 5 more receivers and running backs combined and 2 tight ends as we round up the draft. The top of tight end, Michael Trigg is interesting to me, but he goes way later. There's no real reason to take him right now. The only player I was really above before a couple days ago was RJ Maryland, and he's just soared up there. So no real reason to take a tight end at this point, in my opinion. So the quarterbacks, we just missed on Pribula, which is a shame. Running back, nothing at the top. Wide receiver, nothing at the top. We're going to take Stockton a little ahead of ADP. I think people forget how good of a rusher Gunnar Stockton is. We saw him flash it last year. The reason his output wasn't better in the couple times he started, one, he played incredibly difficult opponents in the SEC championship game in Notre Dame in the playoff. Second, he was a young player, took some sacks he shouldn't have, which will happen against big competition. But you can go back, look at his high school stats. He is a very good dual threat quarterback. He has better weapons this year, wide receiver with players like Zachariah Branch. If we do see a little bit better pocket presence from Gunnar Stockton, the rushing output should be better. Not something crazy like Diego Pavia's, but should be better nonetheless. A couple guys come off the board. Reynolds too high. Farouk, Rayola. No one I'm really worried about taking at this point. As far as the top of the running back board, this is probably where we want to look at some point. Offrey, ADP outside the top 200, he's missed split that backfield with Fagan. So that's one that we should have our eye on. I think Donaldson, we do not know with Ohio State that this is going to be Peoples. I think other people are assuming that. This is a running back that you probably want to take a shot on just getting something like this on your team for Ohio State. We don't have a piece of this offense. So we'll take Donaldson as RB5. Again, reports out of Ohio State weren't fantastic on Donaldson in the spring. He's the West Virginia transfer, but the player that they were raving about is Peoples. I just don't think that it is going to be one or the other, as we saw last year with two better running backs, albeit. They're very willing to split the workload. They have a 10.5 win total. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for two running backs to succeed. You just hope the camp news on Donaldson's a little better than what we saw in the spring. A little disappointed. Was hoping we could maybe get a workload a little bit stronger for him, but alas, that's not been the case. So up at the top of the board, Logan Loy, I don't know what to do with this Minnesota offense, to be honest with you. They were super run heavy 2 years ago with Darius Taylor, very pass heavy last year. This year, they're breaking in a new QB. They could be a little run heavier. Complete uncertainty at the top of their receiving room. He's just been the most talented at a decent level of competition. So it's probably someone we should come down on. Lewis Bond, I don't understand, especially because this is an offense that's going to be way more pass heavy. Remember, like Bill Bryan rejected the Tom Castellanos experience and forced Grayson James in there. Now they have a transfer from Alabama of 4-star caliber and Lott again. I think this offense is probably going to push like where they were at like a 40% pass rate. They're at least going to be balanced. So Lewis Bond, they didn't do anything at receiver of consequence. I think he's going too low still. You don't need to take him till outside the top 200 right now. For some reason, he's been falling a lot, which I don't truly understand. Maybe one of you has an opinion on that. Where did Kevin Jennings go? I did not see Kevin Jennings come off the board. We're coming up here pretty soon. I will take a look at that at the end. We have Kevin Jennings ranked pretty high, even considering he has a bad buy structure. He was awesome last year, kind of our hero. This is why we want to take our running backs early. Like, look at the top of this running back board. Like, Roman Hemby is probably the best one to look at. We're just going to make that pick with Indiana. It's going to be a timeshare, but Indiana's win total still 8.5. The only player I would maybe take over him is Aiden Lawfrey. But again, not exactly a position where I think you're going to see all of the work, but should be efficient enough. So now, 5 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 0 tight ends still. Again, if we need to take 2 last-round tight ends, I will. Absolutely no question about it. There's plenty of opportunity down here. Wide receiver is still also a position you can get a lot of very good players late. Deuce Robinson from Florida State still not off the board. And now we are in the 190s for ADP. So this is these are going to be the last 2 positions we focus on to close out drafts here. Generally speaking, this is how a lot of my drafts go with the tight end position. Generally, I'm not waiting this long on quarterback, but we just kind of sat in that weird sweet spot, pick number 5. You're probably not taking sellers yet. You get a good running back like Mekhi Hughes. Other players in this range are like Jeremiah Love, if you like him. If one of the other running backs fell, sometimes Bryson Washington's still there. You're going to get a stud running back, but you're not going to get a stud quarterback. So depending on where you fall in the draft, sometimes you just end up with a pick like this where you push QBs. But the other thing is we have 2 QBs with win totals of over 10. That's Georgia, Gunnar Stockton, and Drew Allers from Penn State. And we have a couple dual threats in Castellanos, Pave, and Jalen Daniels. This is a really well-rounded quarterback room, in my opinion. All right, so we could take Michael Trigg. We have him far higher as one of our top tight ends. I am going to take him right now between him and a receiver, but Trigg is going in a spot where I'm comfortable with. Again, we're talking about last 5 rounds here, so nothing out of the ordinary, crazy. The only player that was, I think, potentially worth taking there was Deuce Robinson. That would create a stack for us for the Florida State team, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary with Castellanos. Castellanos wins with his legs, not his elbow. So, I don't know. A little bit of a hindsight, maybe I would go back and change that pick, but I think it's fine overall. Again, we're betting on Castellanos rushing for 600 plus yards, not throwing for 3,000 or something like that, which is very unlikely. The top of wide receiver, the difference in ranks and ADP right now, we have Chris Hudson pretty high for Arizona. We just don't know who the wide receiver one is there with Ted McMillan gone. It's probably not going to be someone who is an incumbent for that team. We have McCulley pretty high for Michigan. They just don't have any other pass catchers of note, but they're also going to be one of the run heaviest teams in the country. So I still don't love that ranking. Will probably come down. I already mentioned Loya. I don't know what to do with him. Bond is someone I am drafting, probably right now. Hudson with Penn State, just no idea if it's going to be Ross or Trevor Pena or him or a tight end. Plus, they have a lot of very good running backs. Griffin Wilde, favorite FCS transfer. Not a good offense. Don't know if he's the number one there. But yeah, there's a lot of differences between our rankings and these players at the top. Like Marquise Johnson might be the wide receiver 3 for Missouri. Vinny Anthony, he's probably the one for Wisconsin, but like Trutch Kahun is there. Devontae Ross, that's completely up in the air. Clemens is certainly behind our friend True Walker. Malachi Fields, Jordan Faison, who knows? So as we switch, wide receiver eventually drops off. There's no real certainty with these players. I think you can get a good wide receiver like rounds 13 through 17. When you start getting to 20, once in a while, there's a guy here or there. But I mean, man, this dries up pretty fast. As far as ADP, whatever you do, please do not take Malik Benson. I saw him on here. Did he get drafted? No, he didn't. He must be still down here somewhere. There he is. Please do not take Malik Benson, whatever you do. So a couple picks left. Probably going to push tight end to the very end. Somebody take Brett Norfleet. That's my guy. I don't see where he went. All right. Wide receiver for us, Horton, Hernandez. We'll take the Wake Forest wide receiver 1, presumably Carlos Hernandez. That offense is going to be a lot run heavier than previously. It's the former Washington State staff down with Wake Forest now. But as usual, pushing tight end to the very last spot in our draft. Someone must have taken Brett Norfleet. Oh, he's still there. Oh, it's because I'm an ADP, not ranks. Excuse me, guys. Still shaking off the rust a little bit. So we will try to take Brett Norfleet if we can as our last pick. He got hurt last year. It was awesome when he played. Some of the other tight ends to consider in the last round, I think Australia is fine. This is my ranks now, not ADP. So obviously some of these guys not being quite as high. He's probably the Iowa tight end one. There's uncertainty with that position. Lachey just got drafted. Randy Pittman with, this is interesting. We got Tom Castellanos. Do we make the stack here? That's a decent tiebreaker. Maybe we take Randy Pittman. A little worried about him coming from UCF. They still have some talented players. Landon Thomas is a former 4-star tight end. He just played in that inept offense last year. Bowden Grown from Kansas. He's the Rice transfer. Had an awesome season 2023. Got hurt after 4 or 5 games last year, so we didn't see a ton of him. Kansas is now transitioning offenses again, but, I mean, he's going to be on the field. Benji Gosnell from Virginia Tech, Franklin, Jake Overman. There's a lot of players I'm not super excited about down here, as you can tell. You can throw, like, if you get down to this range at tight end, very little differences between the players. I would just try to correlate with the quarterback if it makes sense. But, I mean, there's just not very many players down there worth drafting. We're going to take Randy Pittman if it gets to this position in the draft, and he is still there. Because we have Castellanos. We're one mini stack with this team at the very least. Hopefully. Otherwise, we're taking Norfleet. Ricky Collins. All right, said Syracuse News this morning that they sent Ricky Collins to media days, not Steve Angeli. Whoops, you don't want Norfleet. Randy Pittman to complete the stack. So that does it for us in our draft. We're going to recap this and take a look at where Kevin Jennings went, among other teams. So the ADPs that were a little out of whack. So to recap the team, we went Diego Pavia, Thomas Castellanos, Drew Aller, Jalen Daniels, Gunnar Stockton at quarterback again. Not prioritizing quarterback in this draft because of where we selected in the beginning. Running back is the scarcest position, so that is where we prioritize based on our 5 spot. We end up with a blend of quarterbacks on elite win total teams. Win totals correlate to points. That's Gunnar Stockton. That's Drew Aller. Both have mobility. The quarterbacks on teams that are a little weaker in terms of win total and projected scoring, we have elite dual threat abilities. Diego Pavia, Tom Castellanos, and Jalen Daniels. At running back, this is the scarcest position in football right now. It will probably get a little deeper as we get into camp and get more news on who's leading the backfield. But right now, there's a lot of timeshares that people haven't figured out. We started Mekhi Hughes, Jaheim White, Jonah Coleman, our first 3 picks. Loaded up at the top of the position with proven commodities and offenses that should be conducive to running the ball. Then we got a little riskier. Emmett Johnson, he was the lead back for Nebraska at the tail half of last year. Did not play that role the whole season. Really, his counterparts played their way out of it. Donaldson is a stab at the Ohio State backfield. He's the West Virginia transfer. We have Roman Hemby transitioning from Maryland to Indiana. At wide receiver, didn't prioritize this up top, but took shots throughout the draft on Eugene Wilson, Mekhi Lemon, Jeremy Bernard, Trent Walker, Jace Brown, Louis Bond, and Carlos Hernandez. It's a blend of some players who should be the number one in offenses, generally conducive to the pass, but not always, combined with target share hogs a little later. Tight end, we went Michael Trigg, and Randy Pittman. Michael Trigg already was a focal point of the Baylor offense last year. Randy Pittman transitions from UCF to Florida State. He was already on Gus Malzahn's offense last year, and now we see him in the same spot with Castellanos. That is us overall. Not sure why this is still up and we haven't gotten to the overall draft board. I'm going to refresh this and see what happens. So excuse me. But yeah. Let's see if we can find this one. Is it at the top? Here it is. All right. Where is the draft board on desktop? As you can tell, I do not do desktop very often. Does someone in the chat know where you can just see the draft board? I do not know this. Well, where Kevin Jennings went, I'm not sure. I guess I can scroll through this until someone hopefully tells me where you can just see the board. He must have went higher than I expected because he is pretty high in our ranks. But I haven't seen him yet. Maybe he went later than I thought and I missed him. Did I already pass him and miss it? Kevin Jennings has the bad buy structure. That is all I know about him right now. There he is. Pick 47. Did scroll past. To Mikey B. When Haynes King, Kevin Jennings, Jackson Arnold, Gio Lopez, Noah Fafita. Good blend of QBs. Darius Taylor, Justice Haynes, Daniel Highshock, Kanye Udo, Ruben Owens, Wideouts Williams. There's 3 backs on here that I'm not sure lead the team. I would have bet against Udo. Maybe Highshaw. They bring in the Iowa transfer. Sean Williams, Wideouts Williams, who knows? He was hurt last year. Cam Coleman, I don't know who's the number one there. Carnell Tate, Caden Lee. The thing with Ole Miss is everyone's drafting the Ole Miss receivers really high. There's like 5 of them that go reasonably and 2 tight ends. Plus, they have a new quarterback that might just run the ball a little bit more. DeAndre Moore, Eric Rivers. You got a big Georgia Tech and Auburn position. Joe Royer, Luke Reynolds. I'm out on entirely. Weird team. Jennings, pick 47 is around his ADP, so that's not really super weird. But yeah, now that I can't find the draft board, I'm not sure there is really anything else to mention right now. If you have a question on the player, even if you're watching this after the fact, let me know. You can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Jesse. We'll be posting all kinds of content on there, doing these drafts regularly. If you would like to be a guest, we do this kind of content already, you can let me know as well. The ranks updated close to daily. They're in the link below. $9.95 for the entire summer. Should say if you or somebody knows a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But I think that is it. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, throw them below. Leave a like. subscribe to the channel, all that fun YouTube stuff. But until next time, thank you guys for watching. We will be back again soon with more college football, basketball content. Until then, good luck.